Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. It's that time of year again. The 2024 MLB season is about to kick off. I know the best part of this channel is the power rankings. Comes out every Sunday. So if you like that stuff, don't worry. Second weekend of the season, it will be back, and we'll be back with a vengeance. Every week it'll be happening. But to kick things off, normally I would do like a division breakdown and everything, but guys, honestly, I've been dealing with some things off the video screen. Not a lot of time to get ready for the season. So we're just going to do a prediction video looking at all of the divisions, try to talk about each team, what I see, what the offseason was kind of like. But guys, honestly, if you know anything about me, followed the channel for a little bit. There's two things I don't really follow too much off-season baseball. I don't follow the prospects too deeply. So if I miss something, go to the comments, because that is what this channel is about. We're about keeping the conversation going, and you can do that in the comments. You can do that in the Discord. But guys, let's jump into it. We got the 2024 season kicks off in a couple of days. Thought this would be a better video. Potentially I'll do a power rankings video to kick things off. Let me know if I should do that in the comments below, but let's jump into it. As always, we start things off with the AL East. Number 5 in the AL East. This is where I'm kind of sitting them. We have the Boston Red Sox. Not a great offseason for them. They signed Lucas Giolito. He was probably the biggest name going for them, and he's out. He's out with an injury. Think he's going to be out for the whole season. I'm pretty sure about that. Not a whole lot going for the Boston Red Sox. Signing Tyler O'Neill, I guess, is their other big signing. Big story. Verdugo, he's out. Rafael Devers in the second year of his monster contract. So they got a little bit of time to start putting things together. But as we know, the East is always stacked. And I just see them being at the bottom. Could be another 500 team, though, still. At number 4, I got Tampa Bay Rays, just taking a little bit of a step back here. They got two of their big names. McClanahan, he's still dealing, coming back from that injury. He's not going to be back for a little while. The bottom of their lineup is a little bit of concerning to me. I don't know if the prospects are really going to help fill that gap. We all know what happened. Wander Franco, he was supposed to be a big deal. We all know what happened with that. Baz, he's out as well. So the rotation does not quite have what we are used to seeing. We saw them bring in Savali. He's going to be their free agent signing in the starting pitcher role. And we see Curtis Mead, who I think is their number 1 prospect coming up. What he's going to do impact the Tampa Bay Rays, I'm not sure. But this division, it's going to be tough. And I got number 3, my own team here. Always start the first video of the season wearing the gear. But if you know, I switch it up all throughout the season. But number 3, we got the Jays. I think they've taken a step back. I think last year was really a big chance for them to make a run. And as you know, in the playoff prediction video, did not go as I had thought it might have. They're bringing Justin Turner, kind of trying to fill that hole with Matt Chapman going out on the team. And other than that, not a whole lot of things to be super excited about for the Blue Jays. A lot of the same roster. We lose some key people that we had picked up at the deadline, Jordan Hicks being a big prime example of that. The other two teams seem to be making steps forward, and this one was a little bit debatable. I think it can go either way, but right now I do have the number 2 being the Baltimore Orioles. And I know you guys are probably not happy about it, but I just don't know if they are going to be able to compete with the powerhouse that is the New York Yankees up top. So to touch on the Orioles, biggest signing of the offseason, Corbin Burns, just absolutely awesome. They do, however, have couple guys they're missing in their starting rotation that they have come to rely on. Means, of course, he's not going to be in there. Batista, big part of their solid back end of the rotation, the bullpen. He's not going to be in there. So a little bit of filler. Corbin Burns coming hopefully to fill that void. On the other side, we have the Yankees. And this is probably what had me consider them maybe not number 1. The rotation's a little bit alarming to me. Garrett Cole is going to miss at least a month, and if not a little bit more of the season with his injury. He's the top of that rotation normally. And they're bringing Stroman. He's been in this division before. He has not been amazing. He had a pretty good season last year, right? And we're going to see if Cortez can kind of duplicate what he did last season as well. On top of that, we all know Juan Soto. He's the big add for the Yankees there. Verdugo's in there. That lineup in the top 5, absolutely scary. Rizzo, Judge, all those guys. It's going to be the biggest scary thing there. Maybe I'm putting a lot of emphasis on that. And forgot to mention, Orioles, they do have Jackson Holliday. He's in the wing, probably going to come out in May, I would assume. So, moving on to the Central. It's a pretty interesting division. I think this one is due for a pretty big shakeup, as we've seen over the past number of years. It's been the worst division in the American League. How long is it going to stay that way? This might be the beginning of the turning point for the division right now. I do have number 5 being the Cleveland Guardians. I'll be honest, a couple of these teams, a lot of the players I don't recognize, so it was hard to really put my finger on what was going to happen. A lot of young guys on this Cleveland Guardians team, most of them very low years in the MLB, right? Carrasco coming back for them. He's going to be maybe their number 5. Not a big deal with them whatsoever. But other than that, like, a lot of the Guardians guys did play last season. Again, they do have some top talent, right? Jose Ramirez, big monster guy. Can he carry his team? He did a really good job of doing that last year. Right now, I am not super excited about this team, whereas some of these other teams may be young as well, but I think they do have a lot of the more high prospects. Number 4 here, I do think the Royals are going to start turning a corner, maybe start trajectory as a team going up the ranking system here. They signed Adam Frazier, Hunter Renfroe, again, 2 guys that aren't like going to make a major difference on any team whatsoever, but some MLB talented guys. And of course, they add Waka, Lugo, a little bit of the rotation, getting some strength to it. And we all know Rawlings and all those guys, top side of the rotation, have been a big strength of this Royals in the past. So it'll be interesting what that is about. They did make a trade in the offseason for Kyle Wright with the Atlanta Braves, but he's not going to have an impact right now. So you can really see the Royals are planning a futuristic team here. And I'm excited to see how this team really competes this year. Starting to see some of these young guys. Number 3, I got the White Sox and considered having them a little bit higher, but I just didn't. A lot of this team has disappointed a lot in the past, and I don't think they made too much of a difference. They really addressed the bottom of the lineup, which I guess was their biggest weakness. Paul DeYoung, Fletcher, Maldonado, those guys getting signed in there, they're all going to fit in that bottom of the lineup. The depth is there. We all know the White Sox top of the lineup was relatively strong, but the rotation probably a little bit lackluster, but they tried to address it. Flexen coming in, Fede coming in, Soroka coming in, 3 top MLB pitchers, not top, but like guys that have been around the league. They're, as long as, just might not be able to replace what they had with Dylan Cease and Giolito in the past. Number 2, this is a stretch. Maybe I'm just stretching. This division was really tough, but I do got the Detroit Tigers at number 2 here. Bunch of young guys, right? Kerry Carpenter really showed his way last season. They have number 1 overall pick Torkelson starting to get his feet under him. He's going to maybe have a really big impact year. They added Flaherty, Maeda as 2 starting pitchers, and a rotation that had some top-heavy guys to begin with Casey Miz, right? So Detroit got number 2. Maybe the biggest stretch of them all. Maybe not necessarily. We've seen Detroit have times in the past where they were relatively good, and I think they're only going to make progress. I expect some of these other teams to maybe fall back. It's interesting. All 4 of these teams could, in my opinion, be mixed up. But number 1, I think, is pretty much a given. They're bringing back a lot of the same guys as last year where they won the division as well. Adding some guys in there. They got Carlos Santana was, I guess, their biggest offensive signing They bring Desclafani as well as Reynaldo Lopez as some of the pitching guys. Lose Sonny Gray, maybe not necessarily replaced him in terms of skill, but I think in this division, the Twins should be able to keep it going. Moving on to the West. We got Oakland A's. Like, come on. How do I have anyone else? I was kind of going through the roster, getting ready for this video, and I couldn't really put my finger on who was going to really make an impact on this team. All of their starting rotation has a projected ERA above 4, and their bats, not a whole lot going for them. The one thing I will say is that they have a ton of high picks. They kind of got unlucky in the 2023 draft, getting number 6 overall, but they bring in J.D. Davis. J.D. Davis is their one signing in the offseason on the offensive side, and he is the most veteran player on this team. I think he has 5 years in the MLB, something like that, which goes to show something with that. Number 4, I got the LA Angels. We all know the story, Ohtani leaving them this offseason, right? It's making a big deal. I was going through this. I noticed they had 6 players that were drafted in the first round all throughout their careers, right? But they do have players that were drafted high. Can they finally put it together? Mike Trout obviously counts as one of those guys. I think Rendon counted as one of those guys as well. But the Angels, it's been one of those teams that have just not been able to put anything together. It's been like one of the most cursed teams on this channel since I started. Always getting behind them early in the season and them just falling off later. So interesting. What will the Angels do? I think the 3 teams ahead of them are probably quite a bit ahead of them. It could pretty much be up for debate, and right now I think it's pretty much going to stay the same as kind of how it ended last year. With number 3, I got the Seattle Mariners. They made a trade, giving up Robbie Ray. They bring back Mitch Haniger. He finally comes rolling back in after a short leave from Seattle, so not too much going on there. Got to trust them. Julio Rodriguez, J.P. Crawford, how are these guys going to continue the momentum of what this team has been built around? Those are 2 top guys. They've built a strong offense around those guys, and now they're really addressing the rotation. The rotation has some 3 solid guys right at the top. We got Castillo, we got Kirby, and we got Gilbert. Like, those guys helped carry this team into the playoffs next year. If they can keep it going, this team is probably underpredicted. Could be 1 and 2. It would not surprise me. But I had to kind of give credit where credit is due. Number 2, World Series champs. I don't think they're going to do much different in the regular season than they did last year. Like, they're still trying to recover. They have some top guys as well in their prospect pool. I was really looking into that. Wyatt Langford, seems like he's going to be a big deal, make a big impact on this team. Jared Walsh they bring in as a little bit of addition. So for the most part, the core and all that for the Texas Rangers is the same. The pitching has me concerned. Evaldi's going to be leading this team out there. DeGrom, Scherzer, those guys are still on their way to recovery, but they do have a 5-strong rotation that can at least get them going through the start of this season. And that leaves me to number 1 in the West. I got the Houston Astros, and I just think they're going to keep rolling because they have the exact same lineup for the most part when it comes to their bats. Their bats have been very consistent, and they haven't had to make any changes. The one thing that does concern me about Houston being able to repeat is that they have a lot of these pitcher guys on the DL. Verlander, McCullers, Urquidy, Garcia, 4 solid rotation guys that they're used to having in there, all on the DL right now. I think Urquidy will be back, one of the fastest on there. But at the same time, they still are trying to get it done. They bring in Josh Hader, so their bullpen gets stronger. Already what has been a strong bullpen in the past. So there you have it. All right, and now to just kind of pick who's going to make the playoffs. Obviously, division leader is going to have it in there. And then we got 3 other teams that are going to have to make it in. I think these 2 are a lock. And I think Baltimore is going to get the other spot too. all the rest of the teams, I think the Central's still only going to get one team out of there. We might have these two teams competing for playoffs. These two teams still competing for playoffs, but I think other than that, it's going to pretty much be the same as last year. Let's move on to the National League. All right, the National League's going to be pretty interesting as well. Of course, never know what's going to happen. One thing I think is for certain, I'm going to start this one a little different. Number one in the National League East is going to be Atlanta, guys. These guys didn't really make too much changes, especially on offense. They had Kelenic, who is probably going to sport in near the exact bottom, maybe be a bench player. But they made changes. The rotation, they added Lopez as well as Chris Sale. We haven't really seen the same Chris Sale that we've seen in the past, but he's been dealing with those injuries. But maybe a new scenery in Atlanta is going to be all of the difference. I'm going to go down number 5 now. I got the Washington Nationals. These guys they're not going to be as bad as they used to be, right? They've been slowly rebuilding since their World Series pushes and everything like that. They bring in Winker, Joey Gallo. Kind of interesting. The fact that he's still on a team is, I guess, DHs are always the shift span now, so that's going to make a big difference. And Senzel, they bring him in from Cincinnati, which I thought was pretty interesting because Senzel was a very top pick early, I guess 4 or 5 years ago. He was a top pick for Cincinnati, and he just didn't seem to make all of that big of a difference. Now he's in Washington, going to be getting a chance there. They got Jonah Gray as their rotation, Corbin. These guys, the rotation's really the same, and I think that's what's going to really keep them from making a ton of progression this season. Not a lot of power there. Miami Marlins, number 4, Alcantara is out as of right now. Could be a little while before we see him recover. I think he was a Tommy John guy. There's so many Tommy John guys, it was hard to remember them all. My notes they're not that great. Tim Anderson is the big signing for the Marlins, adding a little bit there. I like the Marlins. I do think a lot of their players go under the radar as an organization. They've always seemed to be that team. Last year, we saw them perform way above expectation in terms of analytics and wins. They performed a little high, and I don't think they're going to be as lucky. You would suspect them not to be as lucky as they were last year, but some starting pitchers. I guess the main guy, they got this Max Mayer guy coming in. Could be a big impact player. We'll see what he is all about. I don't know. Again, prospects are not my specialty. Number 3, we got the Mets. I don't think they're going to be competing for a playoff team, but they're bringing back. They've kind of made all their splashes in the free agent market like many, many years ago. Like Harrison Bader is their number 1 kind of signing in the offseason. I'm not going to get too excited about that, but I guess over the past few years we'd always been talking about them, but we saw them trade Verlander, we saw them trade Scherzer, all that stuff. They're still stuck with Lindor and all those guys, but they're trying to still rebuild a rotation from, it's not going to be what they had hoped for in the past, but they got some guys, Severino, Sean Manaea, and Phil Hauser coming in for the Mets. So 3 solid guys that have eaten up innings for many teams in the past. Severino, of course, having his issues, but he has had his positives as well. But exciting. I think the Mets are going to be better than last year, you would hope. If you're a Mets fan, you should be checking out for that. Number 2, Philadelphia Phillies. I think right now it's pretty easy to say that it's going to be 1-2. And for me, the biggest difference is that the Phillies just don't have the starting rotation that Atlanta has. Phillies have Nola, they have Wheeler, and then it starts to fall off relatively quickly, and they didn't really do anything to change it. They bring in Spencer Turnbull. I don't know if he's going to make too much of a difference for them, but their lineup is relatively the same. Rhys Hoskins has left, so they're going to have that little bit of a hole to fill, but he hasn't been the impact player that they've had him be in the past. So I think the Phillies kind of are going to be a lock into that spot. And Atlanta, they got the stars, man. They got Acuna, right? Acuna, number 1, probably best overall player in the league right now, filling up all the stat sheet. So with that, I think Atlanta is that lock. to win the first spot. Moving on to the Central, I do have number 5 being the Cincinnati Reds, and honestly, a lot of that had to do with I just wasn't sure who some of these players were. Haven't seen them play, haven't really followed their box scores. Again, spring training hasn't really been something I care too much about because it doesn't matter. Like, the numbers don't matter. They're playing for spots, but you're never seeing the full teams out there. You're never seeing the pitchers going their distance. You're never seeing that kind of stuff. So it's hard to figure out Cincinnati. We saw Ellie De La Cruz be like the story in the middle of the season last year, but again, it's one player, and we're going to see what that is. I'm a little more excited about this number 4 team, and maybe that's why I moved them on up. But we got the Pittsburgh Pirates at number 4. They made a couple of things. They bring in Rowdy Tellez, Michael Taylor, Yasmani Grandal, so like some MLB players coming in for the Pirates. Bullpen, not so sure, but my writing is so bad. Paul Stennis, I know this guy is a starting pitcher. He's supposed to be amazing. He's going to be one of those fantasy guys that goes under the radar because he's not going to start playing until probably May, right? Like with the call-ups, but he's going to be the guy that we're going to be watching for the Pirates. Can this guy make an impact? Pirates always seem to get these guys, but they always end up having to trade them away. Number 3 in the Central, I got the Milwaukee Brewers. Burns is gone. Woodruff out for the season. So that is big pow for the Milwaukee Brewers. And that was their 1-2 punch for sure. Of course, Milwaukee made some trades. Like DL Hall is supposed to be a good pitcher coming back from Baltimore in that situation. They bring in Joe Ross, Jacob Junis, but these guys are not going to be able to fill the shoes that they did in the past. Jackson Chiraro is supposed to be a number 1 prospect for Milwaukee, but like a top prospect in this league. He's going to be playing. It looks like he's slotted to start in April from what I could see, which is surprising, but we're going to see him. It's going to be fun. Excited to see some of these guys come out that I've heard of start to make an impact. Number 2, I got the St. Louis Cardinals making an impact there. Trying to forget about the season that they had last year. It just was not good. They have 4 guys on this starting batting order that are under 1 year, so a lot of guys that are not quite sure what kind of impact they're going to have. Nootbaar appears to like he's going to be starting on the DL for the season, but we all know Arenado, we know Goldschmidt, these guys are impact players at the top of the order. It's going to matter what the bottom of this Cardinals lineup does. On the rotation side of things, Mikolas continues to kind of be the ace that this team's going to be relying on, but they tried to add some people. Sonny Gray, who's dealing with a hamstring injury, not going to be starting the season. They bring in Kyle Gibson as well as Lance Lynn. So some guys that have been known to give up bombs, but you're in a division. A lot of pitcher-friendly parks here, but also some that are not so pitcher-friendly. And number 1, I do have the Chicago Cubs. Maybe they're going to get back into the winning things this year. I don't know if I should be too excited about it, but Shota Emania, getting his name wrong. My writing is absolutely awful, guys. I know he's the guy that they bring in from Japan, the pitcher. From what I could tell, not a lot of stuff for me to kind of rely on what he's going to be like, but they still got Kyle Hendricks in there and some other of the same guys coming back like Steele and stuff. So the rotation seems to be pretty solidified. Can these guys from Japan make an impact? They had the guy from last year being able to do it too. So I do think this division, again, super exciting. Unlike the East, this division is a shakeup. This is just a prediction. You can see the Pirates win this one. You can see the Reds somehow win this one. But definitely top 4, 2 teams definitely up for grabs. And we'll talk about the playoffs in a second. Moving on to number West. We got number 5, the Rockies. I couldn't put them anywhere else. Like, they just seem like in a world of hurt as a team. They added Quantrill, Dakota Hudson to their rotation, but they're missing Marquez and Santazella. Those guys just aren't back yet, and I don't really know if they're going to be back for a little bit. I think they were on the 60-day DL still, so don't know what's going to go on with them. Rockies is one of those teams. It's so hard to figure them out because Coors is such a impactful stadium, but when I'm starting to look at the rest of the teams in this division, 3 of the teams we know are way better, and number 4, I still think are much better. The San Francisco Giants trying to make a little bit of an impact here. Jorge Soler coming in. They got Kyle Harrison as a top prospect for them. He's supposed to be a big deal, and they also bring in Matt Chapman. So bringing in some guys to be able to compete in this division, I don't know if they're going to be able to do it because we get to these 3 teams. We got one team that went to the World Series. It has an amazing rotation. We got other powerhouse teams, but they're trying. They bring in Blake Snell, Jordan Hicks, Robbie Ray. Robbie Ray is expected to be out at least till the midsummer, but Jordan Hicks, they had him slotted in as a starting pitcher, so I'm curious what that's going to be like. But yeah, Giants are one of those teams that I always get wrong. This is very likely another one of those situations just because I always seem to do it. Number 3, we saw them play 2 games already against the Dodgers. One of them was wild, it's in Korea, so how much weight can you put into it? But I do have the Padres there. The bottom of their batting order seems to be addressed a little bit, or they need to address it. Yeah, it doesn't seem like a whole lot of changes. They bring in Michael King, Dylan Cease to add to the rotation, but this rotation just never seems to get going. They lose a couple of guys with Snell, Manea. So I don't know if the rotation's really going to be super strong. Bullpen has been a strong issue for them, and then we see them bring in 5 different signings in the relief of guys that have been around the MLB for a while. So at least they addressed that. We've seen them have some monster signings over the past year. They didn't really do it over the past few years. They didn't really do it this year. So I don't know if they're going to make a step forward in this division because we got number 2 of the World Series runner-ups, the Arizona Diamondbacks. They got the same rotation, and that rotation is deadly. Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen, and they got Fott, who started to really come into his way down the stretch there for the Diamondbacks. So that is a big boost, in my opinion, to their wins because you're picking up solid wins on bad outings just from those 3 guys. And the depth of it still continues on past that. Jock Peterson, probably the biggest name signing for the Diamondbacks, which is funny because it's almost as if he's played on he's been in this West forever. I guess he had that minor stint in Chicago as well. And number 1, it's kind of hard not to predict them to be the number 1 team. Number 1 signing in the offseason. Of course, we know Shohei Ohtani. They bring in Teoscar Hernandez as well, which has been a solid bat wherever he seems to go. Yamamoto, that was a big offseason goose chase that everyone's like, oh, of course he signs where Ohtani goes. And of course, they bring in Glass now, which is just crazy, as well as James Paxton. And they have Buehler, Kershaw, and other guys, Brad May, all these guys on DL too. So like their pitching as a whole seems so stacked. They got more guys on the IL that are stacked than half these teams in these divisions. So it's just crazy not to put them as number 1 team. I think if I were to do a power ranking right now, you would have to consider them to be number 1 because you got Mookie Betts, you got Freddie Freeman, you got Shohei Ohtani, you got these guys that are just going to mash in LA. If you're a Dodgers fan, you are excited to see the season. Of course, all the off-season drama with Ohtani, with the betting, what's going on there, we don't know. It's still unfolding, but I don't suspect it's going to hurt them. It's not going to be a Trevor Bauer situation. At the very least, there you have it. Playoff-wise, we got the 3 in there. I will say Arizona, Philadelphia, and St. Louis as my other 3 picks to make the playoffs, guys. There you have it. It's not the best video. I've been out of practice for a couple of months as NFL ended, but we're going to be back into it. We're going to get the flow going. Hopefully you stay with me. You know my style on this channel. 1 take, maybe a couple quick edits here and there when there's too many craziness pauses going on. But we're going to be doing power rankings. That's the one thing we know is going to happen, but there's going to be other videos in between. Let me know what kind of videos you guys want to talk about. Maybe some news videos, what's going on around the MLB, maybe some prediction videos of something. Let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. Like, subscribe, join the community. We will see you for that next video.